Sometimes as a grown woman, we need to go back and get that little girl. We need to go and sit down with her, play with her, let her know who she is, give her a hug. Hey ladies, I hope that you're all doing wonderful. If you're new to my channel, I'm Shandice. If you're a subscriber, welcome back. This is my healing series and we are on part 4 of 8. So we are halfway. Actually, first of all, let's talk about episode 3. Guys, for one, I cried at least 10 times reading all your comments. And the one thing that it reminded me is that well, for one thing, I was going to delete that video because literally about 24 hours after uploading it, I just felt so exposed. I was like, this is me bearing my soul. Like, this is me really just being me. And it just felt so uncomfortable. And I'm so glad that I didn't delete it because it was an inner wrestle. It was an inner battle for real. But I'm just so glad that it has made a difference. Like, I truly believe in the power of one, and I'm going to continue with that belief that even if my video touches one person, that's enough. So on to the next. Today, you might be wondering, like, what do I mean by you are worth unraveling? Well, I'm going to get to that. Today's topic is about self-forgiveness and showing love to the little girl within you. And I'm going to start off with a story so that everything will make sense as to why this video is called You Are Worth Unraveling. So when I was 7 years old, I went to Brent Cross with my dad, and which is like this shopping mall in North London. And we went to H and Samuel's. It's a jeweler's, and my dad let me pick out a necklace. And I remember picking out this sapphire stone that was encased in all of these diamonds, and it was a gold necklace. And I was just like so excited because it was just so beautiful. And it was the most shiniest piece of jewelry that I had ever seen or ever owned. And I was just so excited and grateful that my dad bought it for me. So I remember him putting it around my neck and me just being so like enamored by it and just being so like, I just loved it so much. Like, I still remember it when I think about it. For months on end, I would wear that necklace every single day. And one day I took it off. I cannot remember why I took it off, but I took the necklace off and I just remember putting it in my pocket or something. And then when I took it out of my pocket, it was all tangled. It was all knotted up. So think about it, a 7-year-old, kind of like, for one, I don't want to tell my dad because I know I'm going to get in trouble. So I'm sitting there trying to figure this thing out, trying to figure out how do I unravel, untangle this piece of jewelry so that I can wear it proudly again, because as I was saying, I loved it so much. So I'm sitting there doing everything that I can to try and unravel this necklace, and I had no luck. So a few days pass, I keep on trying, and I have no idea what to do, how to get myself out of this mess. So let me tell you what I did. It burns me. It burns my soul to say this out loud. I threw it away. I threw the necklace away because I didn't know how to unravel it. That's part 1 of the story. Now, fast forward to 2018, and I went to a women's conference in North Carolina, which was for writers, speakers, and aspiring authors. So there were like all of these, you know, when you go to conferences and then you have like all of these stalls set up where people might be selling books or like selling different things, right? So during one of the lunch breaks, in between sessions, I started to walk through to see what everyone was selling. And there was this one particular stall that stood out to me where they were selling necklaces, rings, bracelets. So the thing about this particular store which stood out to me is their mission was really helping women who had come from abusive relationships or unstable backgrounds, really giving them a foundation for where they could create a life that was fruitful and meaningful to them. So by purchasing a necklace or a piece of jewelry, you would basically be supporting that mission. Plus the women who came from these abusive relationships and so forth, they were the ones piecing the jewelry together. So I was inspired and I wanted to purchase a necklace. So I remember we could choose words to stamp into the necklaces. Like it would be like a gold or silver plate, and then you could choose like up to 9 letters. So I wanted to get faith stamped on my necklace because I was in the process of really wanting to be an author, and I was at a point that I was just like, I really need to have faith that I can complete my first book. So like I remember thinking, you know, that would be something that I could hold close to my heart. So I get the necklace and I wear it around my neck proudly, love it. That was summer of 2018. Fast forward to the fall, and I went to New York on a girls' trip with one of my friends. And at the end of the trip, I accidentally ripped the necklace off of my neck. And I remember when I ripped it off, like I was just like, oh, you know, it's such a delicate necklace. How am I even gonna get this fixed? And in that moment, I was gonna throw it away. That was my first thought. And I remember my friend saying, bring it back home. Maybe you can bring it to a jeweler, or like maybe they'll be able to like piece it back together. So I get back home, and I remember when I got home, it was even worse. I take the necklace out of my pocket and it's all tangled up. There's all these knots in the necklace. And in that moment, the same thing, I wanted to throw it away. And then I remember in that moment, thinking to myself, why is your first thought that because there are knots in this necklace, because it's tangled up, because it's going to require time and effort to unravel it, why do you want to throw it away? Why is it instead of sitting down and doing the work, your first thought is to throw it away? And in that moment, I kind of felt a little choked up because I still remember where I was at the exact moment. And what I did, I remember going in my living room, sitting down, even though the necklace was already broken because, as I said, I ripped it off my neck. I sat down bit by bit and I took out every single knot. And one thing that I noticed, as one knot came out, it was so much easier to take out the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And in the end, I had a necklace that was still damaged, that was still broken, but it was unraveled. And then I thought back to 7-year-old me, who probably didn't even know that that was a possibility. Her only options were to throw it away because, for one, she was too afraid to speak to her father. And I know you can probably see some familiarities there when it comes to walking in faith, trusting God, having those conversations with God, right? And I think that for us as women, why I want to talk about self-forgiveness and showing love to the little girl within is because I think so often, instead of taking the time to sit down with ourselves and look through all the things that are holding us bound, look through each and every knot, instead we keep writing ourselves off and we keep on throwing ourselves away. So right now, we are going to take some time to face ourselves. We're going to take some time to love on ourselves. So the first thing I'm going to say is it is extremely difficult to discover anything in something that you have already mentally discarded. The moment that we start looking at ourselves as too damaged to be healed, or we just see ourselves in a negative light, it becomes extremely difficult when we have such a negative view of ourselves to then want to sit with ourselves and do the work. When I think about the idea of self-forgiveness, I know that sometimes we can be so hard on ourselves, it's almost as if we don't want to let ourselves off too easily. And I think that when it comes to self-forgiveness, we can forgive ourselves of the mistakes that we've made in the past. And also realize that we also have to hold ourselves accountable to those same mistakes. And sometimes it's really hard to find that balance, because it's like, okay, we can all look back at things that we're probably not proud of, that have in some ways in our minds lowered our self-worth, where it's like, because I did this, or because of this mistake, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to experience love. I don't deserve to have a fruitful career. I don't deserve to have a family. There's so many things that we've probably been through in our lives that in our minds, we have all these reasons why we are undeserving of creating the best possible life and the blessings that God gives us. And I think that when we get trapped in that cycle, then we start to self-sabotage, right? We start putting ourselves, sometimes subconsciously, we put ourselves in situations that we know aren't going to bear fruit. Because we keep on carrying a negative perception of ourselves, it's so easy to fall into that cycle. And the one thing that I want to say, ladies, is that it's so important that we forgive ourselves for not being perfect. And I think about in the Bible, like, Jesus didn't shy away from imperfect people. Like, really think about that. And as I'm saying, this is not about the fact that we shouldn't hold ourselves accountable. I truly do believe that we can hold ourselves accountable for all the things that we have done wrong, but also show ourselves human compassion and kindness. We don't have to choose one and forsake the other. Both can hold hands, right? The same way how I truly believe like joy and sorrow can hold hands. You don't have to choose one, because it's a joint experience. Like, if we're on this earth, the truth of the fact is we're going to experience joy, and we're also going to experience pain. Sometimes I look back at the 7-year-old me, and I'm just like, oh, Shandice, like, you threw that whole necklace away. Like, it was so precious to you and you threw it away. So I had to sit down and ask myself, how many times have you thrown yourself away? How many times have you wrote yourself off and deemed yourself unworthy or not capable, or giving yourself every reason as to why you can't do something, or as to why you are not deserving of something? It really got me thinking about just how often that we can secretly put ourselves down. So when I think about self-forgiveness, I think about, for one, acknowledgement, acknowledging the areas that you can definitely grow, you can develop, you can do better. And then when you move from acknowledgement, there's a moment of stillness, of being able to accept that you've made mistakes, to accept that sometimes you've given up too easily. Sometimes you have done things that aren't reflective of who you truly are. And until we are able to acknowledge, accept, uproot, and then really fill ourselves with new truths, fill ourselves with things that are going to help us to bear fruit, we're going to continue in a cycle of just putting ourselves down, carrying guilt, carrying shame. I was reading Genesis this morning, and what I find so interesting is that when Adam and Eve were in the garden and when they ate the fruit, the first thing that God said to them was, "Where are you?" Now we know God knew what they already done, but God asked them, "Where are you?" And then Adam responded that they were hiding, right? Because they were naked. And then God said, "Who told you you were naked? Who told you your voice didn't matter? You ain't strong enough. You're not bold enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not everything. You're not this enough. Who told you this?" I think about when I was younger, my dad's wife, my stepmom, I guess, never liked me. And I remember not knowing it at the time, but being an adult and looking back and thinking to myself, how could she not like a child? What must be wrong with me that someone who is in such close proximity to me, what was it about me that made me so unlovable? That was my thought. And little did I know, this is the crazy thing. No matter how much my mum loved me, no matter how much my dad loved me, no matter how much love surrounded me, one person was able to put a seed in me that made me question, how can I be unlovable as a child? Like, children are children. I'm so glad that I took the time to unravel that belief. Because what I realized is it had nothing to do with me, and it had everything to do with her own insecurities and her own self-love journey. That had nothing to do with me. I am lovable. And not only am I lovable, I'm loved. And I had to take the time to, first of all, acknowledge that feeling. I had to accept that feeling, but then I had to uproot it and I had to replace it with the truth. And something interesting. So I brought down this simple chain, right? I'm gonna put some knots in it. Okay? If you see the knots, because the chain is so small, taking out the knots is gonna take a lot more time. Like, this is not something that I can do on camera because it's going to take a lot more time to undo the knots. Similar to our lives. When I think about a thin chain, when we are in a situation or a season of our lives when we may not fully know who we are, and because of that, we walk around with all this dead weight, all these beliefs that aren't true, all these knots in our lives which are holding us back, compared to a bigger chain. Think about this bigger chain. I want this bigger chain to represent the version of you who knows who she is, who is not easily swayed, that is able to walk in truth, walk in courage, in confidence, knowing who God created you to be. Let's see the difference. One knot, okay? Look how easy it was to take that knot out. So think about the difference in the version of us that doesn't really know who we are, that walks around with shame, that walks around not trusting and believing who God says we are, who has low self-esteem, who has a negative self-image, compared to the version of us who knows who we are, still imperfect, still figuring it out, still learning. But because you know who you are, the knots aren't able to hold you bound. You're able to release them. You're able to undo them because you know who you are and you know what you're worth. Something that I have learned is that being complicated, because I mean, we can tangle ourselves into a million knots, but being complicated is not a reason to turn your back on yourself. Stop giving up on yourself. If you're the person who is always metaphorically throwing themselves away, it's time to get yourself back. It's time to get back to the truth of who you are. Plus, to know that yes, you're imperfect. Yes, you need to get certain areas of your life together. We all do. We're all on a continued journey of growth. But just because you're still figuring stuff out, it doesn't mean that you should be trash. It doesn't mean that you need to be throwing yourself out on the curb so that the trash man can collect you tomorrow. Like, no. It's time to pick yourself back up, dust yourself back off, and believe that you're worthy of more. Because why not you, right? Why is it that so often it's like we can really be our worst critic? And I think as well, it's like we can really make ourselves into this villain, into this person that it's like, oh, nah, you don't deserve anything good. And you might not say it out loud, but it can manifest through how we live. It can manifest through the decisions that we make. If we're willing to make bold moves, if we're willing to do things that scare us, it's all connected. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was just showing love to the little girl within you who didn't know what she knows now, but she felt so much. And there's something about that connection between the little girl within us who didn't have the knowledge and wisdom and understanding that you may have now, but it doesn't take away the pain that she may have experienced. It doesn't take away all those things that she went through, right? Sometimes as a grown woman, we need to go back and get that little girl. We need to go and sit down with her, play with her, let her know who she is, give her a hug. And so often we also discard of her and we think that let's just forget about the past and let's just move forward because that's all that matters. And to an extent, I understand that we can't just dwell in the past, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't show love to the different stages of your journey that have led you to this moment in time. And I've experienced something that I've definitely had to do. You know how you can do inner child work, and whether that be you writing a letter to the little girl within you, or even just like doing something fun, like going to the park or like going somewhere that you know the little girl within you would have loved. Something my therapist told me to do was to buy crayons and to just color and to draw the life that I want to create, but to do it through a child's eyes, where I'm just like drawing pictures and ideas and things. And it was such a therapeutic experience because it was almost as if I was inviting the little girl inside of me, like inviting her out to play, because she's always going to be in you. So it isn't about just looking back, but it's about standing in who you are now, but then realizing that maybe that little girl within you is just craving some love, some attention, some acknowledgement. Maybe she needs to hear the truth that she didn't know back then. Back then, I didn't know that I could have told my dad. Like, think about if 7-year-old me said, "Hey dad, I tangled up my necklace." He would have probably just brought it to the jewelers and got it fixed. Done. But me being me as a 7-year-old and not knowing much, I took it upon myself to be sitting there trying to figure this thing out on my own. And that's another thing. Why are we always trying to figure out everything on our own? We don't have to. And that's why I really see the power in community. And I'm just like, sometimes we think we have to be superwoman. And I'm at a point in my life that I'm just like, I'm not a robot. I don't want to claim the title superwoman. I just want to be human. I want to be human, but I also want to be a spiritual being. But at the end of the day, as I walk through this earth, I'm a human being with real emotions, with real feelings. I'm fragile. Like, we are fragile. We're strong in spirit. But let's be real, we are human. We are flesh and bone. It's our spirits that make us strong. But I really want to encourage you to just spend some time with that little girl within you and let her know that she's loved. Give her everything that she may not have gotten when she was younger. Now that you are who you are today. Yeah, so that's part 4 of my healing series. I really hope that it just encourages you to spend some time with the little girl within you, to also forgive yourself for not being perfect. I'm going to say today's call to action is going to be to spend some time identifying, let me pull out my little necklace. Spend some time identifying the knots that are in your life. What are some of the beliefs that you have that are holding you back that you need to start unraveling? What are maybe some of the things that you have been through as a child or even as an adult that you may not have fully worked through or even started to work through? Maybe that's a knot that needs to be worked through, right? Whatever knots, whatever entanglement. I'm sorry. Anytime I think of the word entanglement, you know what I think of, but I ain't even gonna get into that. But as I was saying, think about the knots that are in your life, that it's time for you to start unraveling them. And one thing I'm gonna say, I hope this brings this full circle. Even in the midst of your imperfections, everything that you have been through in this life, I want you to know that you're worth unraveling. So don't throw yourself away, okay? Pick yourself back up and start doing the work, because you are worthy, you are loved, imperfect and all. We are in the era of holding ourselves accountable, but also loving ourselves fearlessly, truly loving ourselves. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this time with me, ladies. I will see you in my next one, but definitely, if you want to, share in the comments, what is one knot that you are going to work on unraveling? And you can even, let me simplify this. What is one false belief that you've been carrying about yourself that you are going to start working on unraveling? Definitely share that with me in the comments, ladies, and I will see you in my next one. Take care.